Hey everybody, welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. I'm Brian.
And I'm Matt. And thanks for clicking on this one. We had a great reception for Red Maple Nurseries, the Dick Wolf story, kind of a little bit about his collection, part 1. So that one's under Red Maple Nurseries, part 1. If you haven't checked it out, make sure to. We love doing these deep dives. That's what we call these videos, where we go deeper into the history and kind of the lore of some of these maples. We love that stuff. We're big plant geeks, so we love giving you some of the stories behind these and a little bit more history. So definitely check out part 1 if you haven't, but today we're back with part 2.
Yeah, and if you guys are enjoying these type of videos, make sure you like and subscribe to our channel because we're going to be putting out a lot more of this type of content. So you guys want to, it's a way for you to keep up with what we're doing here at the nursery and kind of bring some attention to some of these amazing cultivars that are out there that you may not know about, or maybe you just need more information on it to make the decision to put them in your garden.
Yeah, we love giving the credit to some of these nurserymen and women who have kind of paved the way.
Absolutely.
And certainly made what we do possible, but also popular in America. And so this is just a little bit of a video to give back to Dick Wolf and say thanks for some great introductions. And today we're going to be discussing Red Maple Nurseries Part 2.
Hey, I'm Tim Nichols at MrMaple.com. We greatly appreciate you watching this deep dive on Red Maple Nurseries. This is such a historical nursery, and it's always exciting to talk about some of these classics in the nursery trade. One of our first ones that we're talking about today is Acer palmatum dissectum Chantilly Lace. This is a plant that we have in our display gardens at Hillstone Arboretum, and it was featured in Better Homes and Gardens when Tova Martin came and did an article on our nursery. And it's one we can't keep in stock. We love it. We always try to show it off, and the colors on it are just unreal.
Yeah, it's a fun tree. This is one that Dick Wolf named. Probably had something to do with the Big Bopper song that was popular back then. I think Jerry Lee Lewis might even had a version of Chantilly Lace. An old tree that's been around, but it has some cool colors. It's got that greener, older growth, almost merging to yellows and pinks on the edges, so you get some really interesting color patterns. It's one that kind of gets brighter as it gets out the leaf. We actually did a full video on it, so definitely check out our full video on Chantilly Lace. And you can see that beautiful specimen we have there in the garden.
I like the fact that this one gets those two tones to it, where you'll have sort of that orange-pink new growth over top of that lime yellow-green.
Yeah, it's almost yellow at points, which is really striking.
And those two-tone colors just make this tree really pop and give it something unique and special in the landscape, and really makes it a little more extra ornamental, which is, I'm guessing, that's also part of where it got that Chantilly Lace name.
Yeah, you know, more of that cascading umbrella shape. It's going to be more of the lace leaf style, so it's going to have more of that cascading umbrella you're familiar with those for sure. But it's an awesome palette for a ton of color. A solid introduction too. I mean, I think this was a great introduction by Dick Wolf, and one that kind of rounded out his collection a little bit too. One of the things I like about the Dick Wolf collection is that he has something in each category. And that's what we try to do when we paint our 10 is we try to pick something that fits, you know, some dwarfs, some uprights, some lace leaves, and some awe and shock and awe of color. And I think that's what this one brought to the Dick Wolf collection, is some really shock and awe for color.
J.D. Vare trees often group the different lace leaves with the different classifications, like a weeping lace leaf, and some people classify them as a green lace leaf or red lace leaf.
Yeah.
Matt, where would you put Chantilly Lace, red or green?
Yeah, it goes through so many color changes. I mean, what I love it for is the pink. I mean, that's what makes the most sense. It certainly can get a little more green late summer with kind of bright pink overlays of new growth, so you even kind of get some splashes then. But it's one that changes. I mean, you're going to get ever-changing color with this every single moment it's in leaf.
Yeah, you can't really put it, that was my point, is you can't really put it in that red, you can't really put it in the green, because you get both out of this. And it's one of those things that just gives you a lot of color change throughout the season. And that's the reason we love it. It's one that we can't keep in stock here enough at the nursery. It's not available right now, but we will be offering it again pretty soon on Mr. Maple.
So next up we have Acer palmatum Shaina. Now this is a witch's broom that was found as a mutation on a larger upright red. We've actually went and visited the original broom because we're crazy. So, you know, we're doing a deep dive here, so we'll tell you how crazy we are. We love to go and get soundwood from the original when at all possible. So Tim and I went to the original Shaina, which is at the Department of Public Safety there at the Villanova campus.
Go.
Hi, Matt Nichols here with MrMaple.com, again with my brother Tim. We talked a little earlier about witch's brooms, and we're actually standing right below a little more commonly known one. In fact, you may have this one in your yard. Right above me here is the original Shaina. This is what became the cultivar Acer palmatum Shaina, known for having a really amazingly bright red color. This little witch's broom here, as it started out, is quite big now. You can see some of the gnarly growth up in there. Shaina was originally found by Dick Wolf of Red Maple Nursery in the 80s, and this cultivar is now all over the world. You'll see it in many different locations. We're standing here on Villanova's campus, actually looking at the very original first one where it was found. In fact, the first grafts were taken from this, and so all the Shainas everywhere you see have been propagated from this this broom here that occurred. Again, looking at the broom, you can see the dense traits of a witch's broom. It's a lot denser than the red upright. Earlier, looking at the Tiny Tim number 2, we had a green upright tree. Well, this is a red that the original tree came off of, and so you can see a lot of the density here. Again, with both of these brooms, they're a lot larger than what you see normally because these are very old brooms that have been around a while. A huge gnarly growth in there, but a really great tree. Shaina is an amazing cultivar. Sold all over the world now, and here's the starting point right here. It's probably been at least 12 years ago, maybe longer, but Tim and I are out there in a rainstorm in front of the Department of Public Safety, and all these people are like, everybody that went in had to stop and ask us, like, hey, what's going on? Most of them were fairly interested in what we were doing, but we were just doing a quick talk underneath that Shaina there. The tree was just high enough up that I could run and jump and cut me a scion out of that broom, so luckily we were able to reach it, but
yeah, it was actually Frank Biles who told us the location of the broom that Billy had told him.
Yeah.
And when we were going to visit Billy Schwartz, a number of these introductions may have had Billy's influence on them as well.
Yeah, there's definitely some overlap.
Like Shaina was named after Billy's daughter, and it's Hebrew for beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of overlap with Dick Wolf and Billy Schwartz because they were working together on a lot of these introductions.
Yeah, I think Billy often describes it as being Dick Wolf's apprentice.
Yeah.
And so he credits him with a lot of his knowledge on maples. And we'll be talking more about Billy Schwartz, maybe even doing some interviews with him on our upcoming podcast. Billy's such a fun character. I'd love to get him on camera more. We've had him speak at the Maple Society meetings a few times, or at least once in D.C. And he's an expert on witches' brooms and just a fun guy to talk to. He knows a lot of the history. So we'll be doing some more deep dives with Billy Schwartz, maybe on some of his introductions. Maybe even on Rare Flora Nursery, who's tied to, and maybe even with Dick Wolf as well. He's got a lot of knowledge on a lot of those things.
And Shaina, like Matt was talking about, is there at the University of Villanova's Department of Public Safety. And when Matt and I went to go visit, it was just cops going in and out constantly. Right. And so we went through probably 50 cards of people saying, who are you? What are you doing? Who are you? What are you doing? Because we're out there in the rain like
crazy kids.
We're out there in rain looking at a tree out of leaf.
Right.
And
I'm running through jumping, cutting signs.
Yeah. And so we got permission, of course. But it's one of those things where people just might think you're a little crazy sometimes whenever you're looking at plants.
We'd actually went inside and we'd contacted them previously. So we'd introduced ourselves to whoever was in charge and explained what we were doing. But we had started doing this during a rainstorm and also during shift change. So it was like everybody was coming in and out constantly. So everybody that hadn't been notified was like, what's going on here?
And then a lot of people who worked there were like looking at it and they're like, I never noticed that before. I walk by it daily. And it's this neat little witch's broom. It looks almost like a squirrel's nest, but it's pretty large at this point.
Yeah.
Growing in a red Japanese maple seedling.
It's a 60-year-old broom now, right?
Yeah. And it is amazing that all the Shainas that are all across the country, that might be in your garden, might be in a container sitting on your porch.
All overseas, everywhere.
Yeah. All of them originated from that one mutation that happened right there. And it's so cool to go and see some of the originals like that. That kind of history is just amazing to us.
We actually took some grafts of the original tree. The original tree is a bright pinkish red upright seedling, so it was a seedling of a Japanese maple. Didn't appear to be a cultivar at all. It was one that had developed there and had just developed this mutation in it. And Dick Wolf and Billy Schwartz having the foresight to propagate that mutation, led to Shaina being everywhere that it is now. So.
Next, we have a classic Japanese maple that many of you have in your landscape and garden. This is Acer palmatum Red Dragon.
So Red Dragon has been all over the world. It's a tree that if you're in Belgium. It's a tree that if you're in Australia. It's a tree probably all over. I've seen it in garden centers in Belgium. It's been popular all over the world. A lot of people contribute this tree to being originated in Australia. I've even seen New Zealand. Yeah. Dick Wolf actually originally shared this tree with people from Australia, and then it made it back that way. But if you look at his catalog, I believe he has this listed very early 60s as one of his selections there. And so it's one that Dick actually did pick out, and he might not have propagated as much at first, so it might have got out there more from other places, but it was his selection.
Yeah, this one actually made its way back to America, but Dick Wolf had this but didn't have it in propagation as much as some of the people who really love this plant. One of the things that really, this is a good plant. Red Dragon's a great red lace leaf, but the name adds so much to this that I think it grew in popularity so fast. And that's what made Red Dragon just become popular all across the globe. And then it just swept across the United States even quicker than Dick Wolf could really produce it and get it out there.
It's a classic in every garden center. It's one you're going to find. It's one Brian says everybody prices up too high because they think so much of it, but we keep it pretty reasonable on this one. It is a fun plant, but a very slow growing Japanese maple. It's one that you'll find lends itself extremely well for container gardening. We do have a full video just on Red Dragon, so if you want to do some more research on that one, definitely check that out. One of my favorite features about it is that the leaf sideways kind of looks like a Chinese dragon. So if you turn the leaf sideways, it kind of has the horns at the back of the leaf, and it kind of has that picked up beard of the Chinese dragon. It's a fun way to look at it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's what you'll see when you look at Red Dragon for forever then too.
And do check out our video on Red Dragon. Our solo video on Red Dragon goes in and shows the plant even blowing in the wind. This shows the added feature that Red Dragon has that a lot of other red lace leaves don't. When this is in full sun, in where we're at in our gardening zone, it gets an orange red to the back side of the leaf. So when this blows in the wind, it looks even brighter red than a lot of other Japanese maples of those red weeping styles. And so it's really almost like the fire glow version of a red weeper.
It's a great way to describe it. It's also one that's going to hold its color exceptionally well in the south late into the season. The video we have on Red Dragon is actually shot in late July or early August. I'd have to look, but it's definitely in that summer heat time frame here in the south. We're in zone 6B here in western North Carolina, but that is a time frame when things typically get a little more green to them. And you can see in that video, it's got excellent color still to it. Lovely plant for every season. A slower grower overall than some of the other lace leaves, which is nice too if you're going to that container planter. But yeah, awesome name too. I mean, of course, the guy that had Red Emperor, Emperor 1 is going to have Red Dragon. He beat us all to so many of these great names. Probably why Dragon's so popular in Japanese maples. You see that as a reoccurring theme. That's one of the fun things about some of these history deep dives is that they kind of set the standards for how we name things, for how we look at them, and how they're framed. I mean, Red Dragon is definitely one of the earlier ones to bring dragon into the naming in America, for sure.
Yeah, and this is such a classic red lace leaf that's fairly heat tolerant. But you want to give this one plenty of sun so that it shows that color. If you put this in the shade, it will go greener quicker than some of the other red lace leaves. So by giving it some morning sun or bringing it out where it can get full sun, if you're in a zone where it can handle full sun, you know, when you get down towards Florida, you're gonna have to give this some protection from the hot afternoon sun. If you're coming up in mid-Georgia, you may be able to grow this in full sun where you can't grow other red Japanese maples or other Japanese maples in that full sun.
It's a generalization. This one works zones 5 through 9. In zone 8, you could typically go full sun with this on the East Coast. It's a generalization because those zones are based off heat, or based off how cold, not how hot. But in general, zone 9, you want to give it late day protection, especially on the East Coast. And that zone 8 and below, it can actually handle full sun for the most part.
Now, one thing to note too, these are grafted high from time to time. I think actually even on our website right now, we may offer some low grafts. Those would be grafted down here. So that weeping habit's going to start at a much lower point on a low graft would be down here, where a high graft will start cascading weeping at a higher point. So that's always something to keep in mind of what you envision in the garden and what you want to start with whenever you're purchasing a Japanese maple.
So next up in this Dick Wolf collection, we have Red Spider. Now this is a lunar lobulum style, so it has that elongated bamboo-like foliage. And Red Spider, you know, being from Dick Wolf, is one of the earlier ones. It's actually one with a bright cherry red spring color, so it has excellent spring color that fades to more of that dark maroon. I think it really speaks to how well of a collection Dick Wolf was putting together too. You know, I keep going back to that, but when you look at the overall listing of plants, there's such an influence in each category. So each tree added something to what he introduced. You know, no two were exactly alike, but each thing, this lunar lobulum is distinctly different than, say, the Emperor 1s and the things we talked about in the last video.
Yeah, and one thing to note too, Red Spider sometimes gets attributed to Harold Johnson. I believe that's Twisted Spider. Some people might be getting those two confused, they are two different red linerlobum types with similar names, so that would make a lot of sense. But
we may do a deep dive on Harold Johnston too.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That might be a future video. If you let us know in the comments below if there's any famous maple producers and breeders that you would like for us to do these deep dives on, and we'll get out as Brian says, we'll get out the scuba equipment and we'll go into another deep dive on it for you. So,
but Red Spider gives more of that cherry red color, which is nice on a red linerlobum selection, and it's one of, I guess you'd say, one of the first red linerlobum selections to get an American name to start getting out there in the nursery trade. And so you see this in a lot of older arboretums that when Dick Wolf was putting it out there.
Yeah, Red Spider too. I mean, how often is that spider imagery used in Japanese maples? It's interesting, you know, it kind of lays the groundwork for that a little bit as well. Not a huge tree in that 10 to 12 foot range, typically in 15 years, so a smaller overall plant. Excellent for that spring color. I think it really brings something with that bright spring pickup, but a fun one for sure, and something I think added a lot to this overall assortment.
Next, we have one of our favorites of the Dick Wolf collection. This is a collector's favorite. It's one of the most unique and one of the smallest dwarf types of the Makawa types, Acer palmatum tattoo.
Yeah, this one definitely has some overlap with Billy Schwartz. You'll hear us say his name a lot anytime we're talking about Red Maple Nurseries, as he was Dick Wolf's apprentice. One of my favorite ones I ever saw this was at Green Mansion Nurseries there at Billy Schwartz Place. He had a gorgeous specimen of it. I believe Rudy Dex now has given it to Ed Shin, that amazing giant tattoo. It's one of the older tattoos that Rudy Dex had. Just a really kind man. We got to go and visit his collection one time and see that tattoo, and it was like, I mean, your heart stopped to see one that big. It's so cool because it's so small, but he had such a mature one.
In so many years.
Yeah, it was just so cool to see all that intricate branching. Tattoo is a classic for being that dwarfer form of Makawa Yetsubusa. It's a dense, compact dwarf. It's one we can't ever do enough of because it's always popular. A couple years ago, there was actually a version of it that got out that was incorrect, and we had it here at the nursery. We jokingly called it Bad Tattoo because we didn't like it. It looked more, it was basically somebody had mixed up Kiyohime type in the trade with tattoo and was selling that. So if you see a tattoo that looks non-Makawa-like, more like Kiyohime, that would be the bad tattoo. You want the right tattoo, the good tattoo, the one that looks more like Makawa Yetsubusa.
Yeah, and it's a nice little dwarf. It's a plant that's excellent for containers. It differs from Makawa because it's slower growing. The leaves are more serrated as well, which give it a little bit of extra texture to that tight, compact habit. And it's one that definitely fits in the Dick Wolf collection so well. Matt, what was that TV show that this one was named after?
I think I triggered some people in one of our videos because I said that it was from Love Boat. And I now know that Tattoo was the small stature guy who was in Gilligan's Island.
I hope that doesn't trigger too many of y'all. But it's such a fun plant. It's one of our favorite collections of plants is the Dick Wolf, and Tattoo is one of our top plants from there. It's so unique and so special.
I'm glad that older tree that Rudy had is now in Ed Shin's collection. I mean,
yeah.
I love when trees like that. It was always in container, so I'm glad that that's now in such a fun garden. Shout out to Ed again. If you saw part one of this, we did an interview with Ed Shin, and no discussion of the Dick Wolf collection will be complete without talking to Ed a little bit, because he is really curated, if you will. If you look at it like a collection, he's really kept a lot of Dick Wolf's plants going in the trade, and has kind of helped some of them have a new life where you're actually getting out to other gardens. Otherwise, they would have disappeared. So in addition to our video, we did some interviews with some people who had firsthand knowledge of Dick Wolf.
Yeah, we got to get on the phone with Rudy Dex and discuss with him who Dick Wolf was and some more information about his giant tattoo.
I went to see him about 3 times.
Yeah?
And the daughter took me down, and I spoke with him. He was an Army colonel. He told me he was in the Air Force. I told him I was in the Air Force too. But he was in office. He was a colonel. And he flew in Europe. You know, I think he was a pilot in a bomber, or he commanded a bomber group. He was a full colonel.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's quite a rank, you know.
Yeah.
It's quite a rank.
Yeah.
An Air Force colonel, yeah. Yeah. He was sort of a tough cookie. Yeah. He always said, "And what are you bringing me?"
Yeah.
You know, in other words, You came to see me, but what are you bringing me? Yeah.
Is that where you got that tattoo years ago?
The original tattoo came from Billy Schwartz. That's it.
Yeah.
He was here to see it, yeah. I got the tattoo in the 80s.
Wow.
It was only a little plant. I bet you it wasn't 3 inches tall.
So, again, we're here with this, the Red Maple Nurseries collection, a classic collection of Japanese maples. Some of the most classic maples. I mean, when I thought of doing these collections, we had to start with Dick Wolf. I mean, I think there's so many you can do, but his are some of the most well-known around the world.
And one of the largest.
Yeah. So I'll start with, I think this is an easy question, but I asked you this in the last video. What do you feel is the most classic of this group? I think it's an obvious one again too, honestly. But
well, Red Dragon's a classic, but I'm going to go with Shaina. I mean, Shaina is such a classic.
True.
Witch's broom that has been in every garden center in America.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think it was one of the first red witch's brooms.
Mm-hmm.
And there wasn't anything else like it.
Being a real red dwarf Japanese
Being a real red
maple
dwarf.
early on.
So I'm going to choose the red witch's broom of Shaina as being a classic just because it added something unique, something special. All the other Japanese maples at the time that were red and dwarf were a lace leaf, and it gave something special and unique, and popularized some of those small red witch's broom ball shapes.
I can follow you on that logic to an extent, but I got to disagree. So if I were picking the most classic one, I'd have to pick Red Dragon. To me, it would be equally classic to what his Emperor 1 did for red uprights in America at the time. Red Dragon was to the red lace leaves at the time. I mean, there's several cultivars that were out there. You know, in the early 80s, a lot of your Japanese maples were just listed as Acer palmatum, dissectum, achroporum, or something like that. They weren't really listed by their cultivars a lot. Red Dragon's one that people could say. There's always a value in that. Not a lot of people wanted to say Tamukiyama. It made it easier and more palatable for people to request a Japanese maple. Early on, you could go in and you could say, I'm looking for a Red Dragon, and you instantly knew what you were looking for. And you knew what you're going to get, too. It's a dwarf selection that really, I think, you know, it's hard to beat as far as classicness. Like Shaina, gosh, I've saw both these in garden centers, you know, in Europe. So it's like, you know, they've been around the world for a while.
I had friends at church who literally wanted a Japanese maple, and they'd come to me and say, Tim, hook me up with one of them Red Dragons.
Yeah.
Because it has that essence of a Japanese garden all wrapped up into it. Even though Tamukiyama may actually have a Japanese name, or an Obstrari may have a Japanese name, Red Dragon translates so well in people's brain into what a classic red weeping lace leaf is.
Yeah.
And I get what you're saying with that, but I'm still going to disagree with you.
I got you.
Shaina is more of a classic to me simply because it was the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And something that that added so much and brought people into understanding what witches' brooms can be in Japanese maples in America. I mean, I think it was one of the more popular ones that really started
It was one of
getting
the
out there.
first witches' brooms that really got out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can see that.
Of these, Matt, what's your favorite?
Well, I'm glad you asked me first, because if I were going to get a tattoo, it would probably be of a tattoo, because that's one of my favorite maples anywhere. I think it's just so cool. You know, I'm a sucker for any of the Makawa types if you watch the channel. I've got a garden where I've got all Makawa types and evaluations there in my front yard, and I've got all different shades and colors of different variances. I've got a huge tattoo there because tattoo is always one that has to be in any Makawa collection. I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. It's in my top 5 always. So
it's a great one. I like it. I love it. If I was choosing one of, it's actually pretty close for me between it and Chantilly Lace. Chantilly Lace is so unique on its color pattern for a lace leaf that, and the fact that we've got a big specimen of it, you really grow to enjoy a plant when you have a tree that develops into a nice specimen in your garden. And every time I see it in the springtime and the summer, Chantilly Lace is one that I love.
if you've ever been to one of our open houses and toured our Uncle Glenn's home, we typically affectionately refer to it as Hillstone Arboretum. He did Hillstone work for many years. We've since put many plants into it, and it's become Hillstone Arboretum there. If you've ever toured that, let us know in the comments below. We learned very quickly when we did open house and we did tours of that house, we had to have Chantilly Lace available. We do an open house typically every Memorial Day. We're hoping to again this year. We typically do every Memorial Day, and what would happen is people would come and they would tour that garden, and inevitably they would come back to the nursery after that garden tour and go, "Where's Chantilly Lace? I must have it. Where's that right now?" And so we learned that if we're going to tour that garden, you better go ahead and get Chantilly Lace ready for open house, because anybody that saw that one in his garden was going to ask for it.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful lace leaf, and it stands out from a lot of other lace leaves because of that unique habit of getting that lime green, that yellow green with that orange pinks new growth flushes. It gives a nice multi-tone effect that I think is a classic in its own respect, and is one of my favorites from this grouping.
So the main thing I'd actually like for you to let us know in the comments below is which of these you're growing in your garden and which is your favorite. So today we've talked about Chantilly Lace, Shaina, Red Dragon, Red Spider, and Tattoo. So we've actually covered a part 1, so make sure to check that out. Red Maple Nurseries collection part 1. Red Maple Nurseries is the nursery of Dick Wolf, so you've heard us talk about those two things interchangeably here. But let us know your favorite selection that was in today's video, and we hope you like these deep dives. We're going to be doing more. We're going to be doing a podcast with some real deep dives, and I hope you like this format and a little bit about the history of Japanese maples. We love this kind of content. It's the stuff we kind of geek out on. I felt really happy when we got the response to Red Maple Nurseries Part 1, because I knew it was a little geekier stuff, but people appreciated it. So that made us feel good. It really made me feel good that people liked the effort we put into making a deep dive for it.
Every tree has a story, and we love here at Mr. Maple giving you that story so you can understand where your plants came from and understand them in your garden so that you can share that with others. And I think you can't grow a plant in the garden and do it justice without knowing the story behind it, that knowing that Red Dragon came from this amazing nursery that introduced so many other selections.
Yeah.
I mean, it's such an amazing piece of history, and whenever you have those plants, you got to realize you've got a piece of that history as well.
Yeah, we feel a responsibility when we do these to kind of give credit to the people like Dick Wolf who've paved the way for nurseries in America. And it's something we just love to talk about it. We love to, I never even met Dick Wolf in person. That's why it's so fun to get Ed Shin on there and kind of get some, feel for who he was as a man and what he was like. But I like that history aspect of it. I love to know who, what, where, when, and why about everything. And I think that's what makes plants interesting too. So we hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Red Maple Nurseries Part 2. So people really enjoyed adding Ed and that firsthand knowledge to our last video. So we wanted to bring that firsthand knowledge again to this video. And so we were able to talk with Billy Schwartz on the phone. Billy was often considered Dick Wolf's apprentice. So we wanted to get on the phone with Billy and just give a little bit more insight.
I think this information will add a lot to it. I really hope you stay tuned and listen to this really informative information on who Dick Wolf was, how him and Billy got to know each other, and a little bit about some of the plants as well.
Yeah, it's always fun to hear about these people from someone who had a close personal connection with them as well. And I don't know of many people who knew Dick Wolf better than Billy Schwartz.
You knew Dick Wolf very well.
Yeah, he was like my second father.
Oh, that's very cool. How did you come to meet Dick Wolf?
I went to a Philadelphia flower show, and he did a display, and he won an award, a silver something award for his display. Came in second place, and I wrote down the information because I said I got to get to meet this guy.
Yeah.
So about 2 weeks later, I figured out where he was, and I drove out to his place, and I introduced myself. And I told him I've got a backyard full of these things, and I've had no formal training or anything. And I would like, to work with him. And then he told me about his background in World War II, and he had to give up his day job when the war ended. He was a B-17 pilot, and he had the lead run usually in the Schweinfurt raids, the ball bearing plants in Germany. And 2/3 of those people never came back. He was really lucky to be one of the ones to come back after 25 missions. And he came back, and he had to give it up at the end of the war, and his father had a nursery, so he.
Wow. Was his dad growing maples at all, or was it mostly other plants?
It was mostly maples. His father was
Cool.
selling them, buying them and selling them. He didn't make them or anything. And then Dick gravitated from the plains to the maple, and then started his own nursery. His father died. His mother was alive, and he carried it on by having his own nursery, Red Maple Nursery. That's what he called it.
So how would you describe, you've said before, I believe to me, that you'd consider yourself kind of like his apprentice.
Well, I can.
That part
well,
of it?
that's how it began, our relationship. As a student, I was a student.
Yeah.
Not even an apprentice, but a student, and I'd go over once, twice a month on the weekend to do odd jobs for him, and then to sit down and graft together. And he would talk about grafting and talk about trees, and then talk about his war experiences, and
Wow.
and then I started to see him more often, and he became like my second father.
What was he like as a guy? Was he a funny person? I've heard he was
Dick
kind of
Wolf
stern,
was
but
not.
I've never really
He was
got to know him.
He was a serious but friendly person, thin, taller than me. So he was 6'1", and very knowledgeable about practicality, and always tried to make the world better.
Oh,
I think his main goal in life was to make things better for people, and he did it through the nursery.
I know a lot of his introductions. At the ones, like if you pull up his catalog, he's got his nursery introductions, and on the list are items like Shaina and tattoo. And I know that Shaina, that's one of your nursery introductions too. I mean, it's named after your daughter, correct?
Yes.
And so that's something that y'all are sort of working together on, I'm guessing, or that I guess he had the bigger nursery at the moment. Will you sort of tell us a little bit about how that was found?
Yeah, Dick Wolf found it on Villanova's campus, driving down Lancaster Avenue, one of the main drags through Villanova University. And he spotted it. And he never did anything with it. And then I found a witch's broom on US 1 in Delaware County, and I named it Wolf's Broom.
Oh, cool.
And I also named one after his wife, Carolyn, that was growing in New Jersey. And then Dick said, Billy, you're naming these. I'd like to give you one that you can name. And that's how Shaina got done. Killarney threw a lot of dissectum seedlings, as did what's the big green one? Green Mist.
Oh, yeah.
Green Mist threw a lot of green seedlings.
We share that photo of you that Tim took. You're doing the Vanna White there beside the Green Mist. We've shared that photo a lot of times of you there with Green Mist at the original nursery.
Yeah,
a lot of our presentations, if we talk about it.
Those two were great producers of seedlings, dissectum seedlings in green.
Hey, we greatly appreciate you guys watching this video. We hope you enjoyed another deep dive on all of these amazing cultivars by Red Maple Nurseries and Dick Wolf introductions. So what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a classic collection. You heard me say in the other video, it's like the classic cars of Japanese maples.
Yeah.
I mean, he was really touching on something when Japanese maples were just hitting their stride in America. It was just becoming part of like the national consciousness of gardening. People were like, those are cool. How do we get those into the garden? A few people had them, but it hadn't hit the mainstream. It hadn't been something that people were gardening with yet. And I think as a result, because of the Red Maple Nurseries collection, those are the trees that kind of hit that market in that early 80s, early 90s time frame. And that's why you see those out there. I mean, that's
Yeah.
why they're classics. That's why they're in garden centers. They're in people's yards. There's old specimens of these. And that's why we want to talk about them, because they're that piece of maple history that we hope you enjoy. I actually majored in history, so I love getting into this geekier plant history side of things. But we hope you like this deeper look at Red Maple Nurseries Part 2. If you haven't already, take a second, like, subscribe, and share. We greatly appreciate that. The greatest way to support the channel is shopping on MrMaple.com, but the second greatest way is sharing our videos. So we always appreciate that.
You guys have a great day. God bless.
Thanks for watching. Hey, I just wanted to remind everybody about our giveaway. All you have to do to be entered is like, subscribe, and share to our YouTube channel, and then post in the comment section below, "I dig Mr. Maple." And that's going to enter you to win. You can enter under every single video. So just a reminder, every single video is a chance to win. We're getting very close. We're creeping up on it pretty fast. We're going to hit 8,000 pretty soon. And when we do, we're going to select some people to win this hat. If this is a popular thing, we may be doing more. Get involved.